بسم الله العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters in Islam. Today in our course Fasting in Islam, in our 8th lesson, 8th video, our new subtopic today will talk about things that nullify Sawm. When a person is fasting, what are the things that if you do, you nullify your Sawm or your fast ibadah? Like any other ibadah, there are things that if you do in such ibadah, it will nullify the ibadah, such as speaking while you are praying in salah. If you speak while you are praying, nullify your ibadah of salah. Same thing happens when it comes to Sawm. There are things that if you do, you nullify your Sawm. And these things are divided into two. We have two types of things that nullify Sawm. The first type are those things which nullify the thawab, are called muhbitat. Your thawab, it's like no thawab, but the fast you fast, you fast, the Sawm you fast, you are not required to make up for it. You are not required for you to make up for it. So these are the things that are called muhbitat. If you do them, your fast is okay. You are not required to make up for it, but the thawab has gone. And there are other things that if you do them, they nullify your Sawm. You are required to pay to make up for that day. Let's start with the first type of these things that nullify. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in different hadiths. In one hadith he said, "Khamsun yaftirna as-sa'im." Although this hadith is da'if, but he said, "Khamsun yaftirna as-sa'im." 5 things nullify fast: telling lies, ghiba, backbiting, doing namima, slandering, gazing with lust, gazing at your wife or any other with lust, shahwa, and also making false oath. All these things nullify your Sawm. And in another hadith, Rasulullah said that, "Kam min sa'imin laysa lahu min siyamihi illa al-ju' wal-'atash." How many people do we have? It's possible that a person is fasting and he not benefit from his Sawm any other thing than hunger. In other hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man lam yada' qawl az-zuri wal 'amala bihi falaysa lillahi hajatan an yada'a ta'amahu wa sharabah." Anyone who does not refrain from telling lies and working upon it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need of his refraining from food and drink. So let's refrain from all these type of things that we'll mention now before we refrain from food and drink. The things that we are required to refrain from while fasting, all these things we are required to refrain from them all the time, even if it's not Ramadan, even if you are not fasting. But when you are fasting, it's more required from you to refrain from such things. The first thing is telling lies, al-kadhib. When you lie while you are fasting, you make the thawab of your fast go. The second thing is backbiting, doing ghiba, talking about others. Even if it's whatever you are talking about, it's true. Backbiting is not recommended in Islam. Backbiting is haram in Islam, so let's stay away from backbiting. And if you are fasting and you do backbite, the thawab of your fast has gone. The other thing, third thing that nullifies the thawab of your Sawm is namima, slandering, taking words from this person to another person and from that person to this person with the intention of causing fitna, of causing fight, of causing misunderstanding between these two people. That is not required in Islam. We are asked to refrain from such kind of acts. Doing namima, it's haram, and if you are fasting and you do namima, it's more haram than any other day which you are not fasting in. The other thing that is haram while you are fasting, but your fast will be okay, it will be approved, it will be valid, but the thawab has gone. It's when you look at your wife with shahwa, or even if it's not your wife, it's if it's your wife, if we say your wife is haram, that means if it's not your wife, it's more haram. So it's haram because it might lead you to nullify your Sawm, to do jima', to do sexual intercourse. So looking with lust gazing to ladies, or ladies gazing to men with lust is not required while you are fasting. The other thing that nullifies the thawab of Sawm is making false oaths. As we mentioned the hadith, Rasulullah said, من لم يدع قول الزور والعمل به فليس لله حاجة أن يدع طعامه وشرابه. Anyone who does not refrain from making false oaths and walking upon them and acting upon them, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need of his refraining from food and drink. So before we refrain from food and drink, let's refrain from these things we mentioned, which is telling lies, backbiting, slandering, looking at ladies or ladies looking at men with lust, and also making false oaths. The other thing that we want to talk about, these are the things that now nullify the Sawm and you are required to make up for that day. These are mubtilat. They nullify the Sawm and you are required after Ramadan to make up for that Sawm. And if it's qada, you are fasting and nullify it, you are fasting a makeup day, qada. And then you do this, one of the things that we'll mention, you are required again to make up for that day. So here are the things. The first one is ridda. A ridda, it's someone defecting from Islam. You defect, apostasy. Ridda is apostasy. You defect from Islam. وَلَيَذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. We seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from such kind of acts. Someone to do apostasy, you defect from Islam, you say, I'm no longer Muslim. وَلَيَذُ بِاللَّهِ. Your Sawm is gone. You have to, if you come back to Islam, if you return to Islam, you are required to pay for that day, to make up for that day. The other thing that nullify the Sawm and you are required to make up for that day is it's our sisters when they reach their menses, monthly periods, or damun nifas, postnatal bleeding, which is the blood comes after childbirth. If nifas comes to a lady while she is fasting, then her fast is nullified and she is required to make up for that day. Even wilada, giving birth, even if there is no blood coming after childbirth, you just you deliver a child and there is no any blood, still that will nullify your Sawm and you are required to make up for that day. Another thing that will nullify your Sawm and are required to make up for that day is fainting or intoxication, to be intoxicated, to get drunkenness. If you are drunk or you faint, it will nullify your Sawm. But for this one, there are conditions. If this drunkenness or fainting will cover all your day, you will be someone has fainted all day, from morning till evening, from Fajr till Maghrib, he has fainted, and he is the one who caused that kind of faintness, then this person will be required to make up for that day. Or he gets drunk. If you get drunk accidentally, you get intoxicated accidentally, for example, you see a glass of water and you drink it thinking it's water while it's not water, maybe it's wine or it's beer, and you get intoxicated, it does not nullify your Sawm. But this is if you assume that the person is drinking water while he has forgotten, that he does not remember that he is fasting. Assuming that, then this person, he did not cause his intoxication, he is not the reason for him to be drunk, so his Sawm will not be nullified. But if you are the reason, and the drunkenness will takes long while from Fajr to evening to Maghrib, then your Sawm is nullified. Another thing that will nullify your Sawm, your fast, is insanity, madness. What this, even if it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 2 seconds, you are fasting at noon or maybe at Asr, this person who is fasting got insane or madness, and if he recovers or she recovers after 2-3 minutes, he or she is required to make up for that day. Another thing that nullifies our fast is sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse while you are fasting will nullify our fast, and we'll talk more about sexual intercourse and what are the things required from a person who nullifies his fast or her fast by sexual intercourse. We'll talk about it inshallah in our next class. ninth class, inshallah ta'ala, in our next video. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us in these remaining days of Sha'ban, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us enter Ramadan with His blessings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in fasting month of Ramadan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa as'ad Allahu awqatakum wa kullu